Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
You know what my favorite emoji is? Thumbs up. Yeah. It's like, fuck you, we're done. No more bubbles, fucker. I see bubbles, I'll call your ass. The emoji they need is the old man Italian wave. Yeah. They get the fuck out of here. My wife hates that. My grandfather had the best. He did the reverse old man Italian wave. The fuck yeah.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, November the 5th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you, Maria, then Stu.
Good stuff there. Let's get some final thoughts from this all-star panel. Adam Johnson.
Well, Maria, some of my names were down 3-4% at 4 this morning, and I'm happy to say now as we approach 9 o'clock in the open, they're up 1-2. And I think that speaks to steady as she goes. Markets are volatile. We've had a huge run, and so there's been a little selling. Fine. Stick with quality companies that are doubling their cash flow. You'll make plenty of money.
Quality companies meaning earnings growth.
Yeah, earnings growth, cash flow growth. Yeah.
Whole market has turned around. Dow Industrial's now up 43, and NASDAQ and S&P following suit. Emily.
Final thought. Mamdani won 75% of the youth vote. He garnered a lot of that momentum on TikTok. We cannot ignore the role that the Chinese-owned TikTok algorithm played in this election. That's something to keep in mind as President Trump negotiates a TikTok deal.
It's a really important point that you make because they do try to lead and get involved in elections. We've seen that plenty of times.
I can tell you firsthand, TikTok censors, bans, and suppresses conservative content, and it boosts leftist content. It boosts socialist ideas like that. So I can tell you that it's happening with young people.
And you think it's directed by the CCP?
I think it's definitely connected.
All right, we will leave it there. Emily Sturge and Adam Johnson, thank you so much. Great show. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a good day. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. It was a big night for the Democrats. Their candidates ran against the president, and they won. Zoran Mandami will be the next mayor of New York City. It wasn't even close. Mikey Sherrill will be the next governor of New Jersey. She won by a huge 13 points. Abigail Spanberger will be the next governor of Virginia. She, too, won by a wide margin. In California, Gavin Newsom's Prop 50 passed easily. That means he can redraw electoral districts to favor Democrats. It also means Newsom has successfully jump-started his presidential campaign. Overall, the left won big. The youth vote went heavily to the Democrats. Socialists ran very strong in the mayoral races in Minneapolis and Seattle. And yes, a socialist will now be the mayor of New York City. Now, earlier this morning, stocks were lower, not necessarily because of the elections. There are still some questions about AI spending and performance. What's helping the market is the report that a strong 42,000 jobs were created in October, and now we've got a lot of green. Dow's up 30, S&P, well, up a half point, and the NASDAQ is down 4. Not that much price change on the day after the elections. Bitcoin, well, that was just over $100,000, and it's now 102.8. It actually dropped below 100,000 at one point. It's down about 20% in the last 2 months. Little change for the 10-year Treasury. You're at 4.12%. The 2-year now at 3.60%. All right. On the show today, President Trump has been meeting Senate Republicans at the White House. There are reports that the GOP will come up with a new spending plan to break the shutdown impasse. Then he goes to Miami for a business summit. We're waiting to see if he addresses the election results. Will he address affordability, which was a winning theme for Democrats in these elections? Oral arguments begin in the Supreme Court as the justices debate Trump's tariffs. Wall Street will be looking very carefully at what is said because any restrictions on tariff policy would likely get a strong market reaction. And of course, we are all over the election results. Personally, I was surprised by the margin of victory racked up by Mandani, Spanberger, and Sherrill. I'll repeat, Sherrill won in New Jersey by a very unexpected 13 points. I live there. We have it all on this Wednesday, November the 5th, 2025.
And that was Maria Bartiromo and Stuart Varney. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of Dr. Berg.
The best meal to clean out your arteries. Let's forget statins for a second. This meal increases something called nitric oxide, which is considered like Teflon coating for your arteries without the bad side effects. It prevents clotting, inflammation, stiffness in the arteries, and thickness in the artery walls. It's a very powerful antioxidant that helps keep your blood pressure in check. This meal will also decrease your bad cholesterol and smother any type of inflammatory fire that's going on in your arteries. It's loaded with nitric oxide, omega-3 fatty acids, which are super anti-inflammatory, polyphenols that protect the inside of the arteries of the heart. Here it is. Wild-caught salmon over a bed of arugula, which is a cruciferous leaf vegetable, topped with crushed walnuts and pomegranate seeds. It's a very potent heart healer, especially decreasing the risk of plaque, supercharging nitric oxide, and helping to reduce blood pressure, drizzled with extra virgin olive oil and a little squeeze of organic lemon juice.
Thank you. So last night was a pretty clean sweep, I guess, for the Democrats. Mamdani, Prop 50 passed, etc. And Winsome Sears lost in Virginia. And anyway, but they lost, make no mistake, because Republicans still don't understand. They're stupid, childish, and wrong. They keep on with the facts crapola. They got to get over the facts. No election is based on facts. It just isn't. It's about popularity. And last night's elections were all about popularity. They were a litmus test, so to speak, on the popularity of the Republican Party and the popularity of Donald Trump. In California, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. There's 30 million people here, and 29.9 million of them are Democrats. Gee, what a surprise that the Democrats in this state took the opportunity to try to stick their thumb in the eye of Donald Trump. But it was about that's what it was about. And the Republicans kept talking about, if you re-gerrymander the district, and then these are going to be the statistics. So they want to talk about facts again. I don't know when they're going to get their head out of their factual ass. It's not about facts. It's about popularity. So they failed to convince Democrats that they should not listen to Gavin Newsom and the other Democrats, Obama among them, that were promoting Prop 50, and say that, number one, because they're unpopular. You say, well, none of these folks are popular. Number two is they've done nothing for you. What has Gavin Newsom done for the average Democrat in the state of California? He's done nothing. He's failed to provide single-payer health care. He's failed to mitigate climate change, the damages from forest fires and whatnot. He's failed to house the homeless. He's failed to stick it to the rich. As a matter of fact, the rich are his friends. He just signed a tax deal for the richest Californians. And you can go on and on with the other people that are supporting Prop 50. That's what you have to do. You have to get to the Democrats. So 2 reasons that they lost big. Number one, they keep preaching to the choir. They keep talking about things that only Republicans are interested in. Property damage, statistics, crime stats, all that kind of crap. Because frankly, if you're going to try and talk to the Democrats, it is crap. They don't care. Politically, they just don't care about any of that. So you got to talk to them about the things they care about and show them. And they'll listen if you talk to them in terms that they will understand. But again, Republicans fail to do that because they got their head up their ass. Hopefully someday, soon, they'll get their head out of their ass because they've got another election in 2026. They hope to not only keep their majorities in the Senate and in the House, but increase those. But if they don't start waking up to the fact that elections are about popularity, not about the facts. Nobody gives a rat's ass about the facts. Even Bill O'Reilly is starting to understand that. On his show yesterday, he was talking about, again, going into statistics about something. I don't even remember what it was. And he said, I know that you guys, when we start talking about this particular subject, your eyes glaze over and you start to fade away or maybe fall asleep or go into a coma, but I'm going to try to make it more entertaining. And so he starts going off into his statistical blatherings, and that's what exactly happened to me. My eyes started to glaze over and I dumped his show and went on and did something else.
So at least he recognizes. Now, all you have to do is get Bill O'Reilly to take action based on that. If you know that people's eyes are going to glaze over, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay? Wake up. Get your head out of your ass and start going for popularity. That's the way you're going to win. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
Vince Lombardi said, the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. At the end of the day, the person that will surrender is the person that didn't work as hard as the other person. You got to work harder than the other person. So just when you felt like you did that last rep and your muscles are saying, I can't do no more reps, you saying, yeah, you got to do one more. Because right now, you might be doing 5 more. While you quitting and giving up, while you saying, all right, I did enough, it's time to rest, he might just be getting in his zone. In order for you to go from one level to the next level, in order for any woman to transition, for any man to transition, the thing that they want must be greater than the thing they currently have. Humans do not transition to another level when they're comfortable with the level that they're on. Because you're thinking right now, like, I want a better home, I want a better car, I want a better family. No, that's what you say with your mouth. That's what you say to make yourself feel good about yourself. Because you don't get out of life what you want. You get out of life who you are.
Everybody likes the idea of success. Everybody wants to have millions of dollars in their bank account. But going out and doing those things, going out and building a plan backwards from that point that you want to be and going through the day-to-day actions of building that, you don't love that idea. You like the idea of success as long as it's easy, as long as it doesn't take dedication, as long as it doesn't take you having to do things that you don't feel like doing when you don't feel like doing them. You need to decide if you're in love with the idea of success or if you're in love with success.
You only transition from one level to the next when you're tired of the level you on.
You can stop at that level, or you can go, I want more levels. I want more fucking levels.
When you start losing, it becomes a habit. That's what's dangerous. And it doesn't just affect you. Now your children and your children's children are going to be broke. Winners win and losers lose. And if you create a culture of losing, if you keep being a victim, if you keep letting people do you and treat you any kind of way, it's going to become a culture. Life happens to everybody, but winners approach it like victors and losers like victims. Winners win, not because their circumstances change, not because they win the lottery, not because they get this network. Winners win because they change their mentality from being a loser, a victim, to being a victor and saying, I have what it takes. I've got the right mindset. I'm alive. I can count on me. So if you're tired of losing and you're ready to win, you owe you to be a winner. If you're going to be the best, the cream of the crop, if you're going to be the apex, you got to be it, not talk about it. You got to be it. It has to consume you. It has to take over you. You're putting in work, and just because you can't see the result, you want to quit or give up. I ain't never quit. I ain't never give up. I ain't never give in. I just kept grinding. You putting in the work, and the only reason you piss, the only reason you quitting is not because you want to quit, because you keep looking up and you saying we 3 in. Who cares what you are? If you keep going, you're going to break through. The only people that don't break through are the people who scoreboard watching. You stopping working to look at yourself. You not grinding. You glaring. You should be grinding and you looking at the score. The score is what it is. The score ain't about to change because you looked at it. Keep playing the game. Keep grinding. Keep working. And that other stuff will take care of itself. And the process is not supposed to be comfortable. So if it hurts, if you feel like you're under heat, if you feel like you're being pressured, welcome to the big leagues.
You got to do a lot of shit that nobody ever sees or thanks you for or rewards you for a long time. It's delayed gratification. If you do the work consistently, 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. 2 + 2 is going to equal 4. And 10 years of motherfucking work is going to pay off.
The equation is always the same. Every single time, if you do it right, you're going to get the same answer. And most of y'all crying. I'm ready to quit because I put in some time. You might have put in some some time, but you didn't put in the time that's required to make your dream become a reality. You can't shortcut success. Ain't no days off. You think because you sick, you can quit. You think because you hurt and you in pain, you can just give up. You think just because you put in some time, that ain't the time. You put in the time coach told you to put in. You put in the time the teacher told you to put in. But you didn't put in the time that life told you to put in. You didn't put in the time that the grind told you to put in. So what? You've been working out for 6 months. So what? You just started studying. So what? You serious. You just got serious 6 months ago. So what? You can't cheat the grind. You either put in the time or you surrender. If it was easy, y'all, everybody would do it. But it ain't easy. But I know you have what it takes to make it happen.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. So on X, on the account Catholic Vote, Nikki Minaj has reportedly lost over 100,000 followers after publicly thanking President Trump for speaking out against the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. And the left is very good at punishing their own. In the Air Force, we used to call it eating their young. And they're very good at punishing their own. And because the rules are made for them. They're the ones that have to follow the rules. Conservatives, would-be conservatives, good idea, but they absolutely must have their people following the rules. They cannot have people like Nikki Minaj out expressing her point of view if it conflicts with Democrat socialist dogma. And anybody who dares to think for themselves, dares to speak for themselves, dares to decide who their friends are going to be, gets punished. And so I hope that Ms. Minaj is going to realize that there's no place for her in the Democrat Party anymore, and that she should, if not move to the Republican Party, then certainly become an independent. Back in a minute. Thank you. The other thing about the elections, particularly the election in New York for the New York mayor, was Mr. Mommy won because he had no competition. Cuomo was, I never heard from him, other than I think he was on the debate stage, but even then I didn't hear anything. He didn't say anything memorable. There's no quotes, no nothing. I don't remember ever seeing one single advertisement or whatnot promoting him for mayor. And then Sliwa has got to be the worst candidate ever. An idiot, a moron who willingly went out and associated himself with the worst parts of New York City, so that every time you think the name Sliwa, you picture homelessness, bums, crime rates, dead people, all the worst things about New York City, while Mamdani or Mommy or whatever his name is out smiling his way to victory. He had a nice, handsome smile. He went out and made himself popular. Sliwa did the exact opposite. He did everything he possibly could to make himself unpopular. And Cuomo just didn't even show up. So, gee, what a surprise that Mommy won. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
Chapter 25. Well, let's light this sumbitch and it better work. The events of the rest of that day were watched on television by a worldwide audience estimated to be in excess of 1 billion people. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin told flight director Milt Windler that they wanted to postpone their planned rest period and proceed directly to the EVA. Kraft, not surprised that the crew didn't feel sleepy, agreed. Cliff Charlesworth's Green Team, which had trained for the lunar service activities, was hurriedly brought on shift. Not difficult, since most of the team had been hanging around Building 30 all day anyway. At 9:56:15 p.m. Central Daylight Time, July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong hopped from the bottom rung of the LEMS ladder onto the lunar surface, proclaiming, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." That, at least, is what Armstrong intended to say. A communications glitch made it sound as if he had said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Armstrong was nonplussed when he returned and found how his historic first words had been heard, pointing out that without the "a," the sentence made no sense. Buzz Aldrin joined Armstrong on the surface. Together, they spent 2 hours and 40 minutes gathering 21 lunar rocks and deploying some simple experiments. It wasn't a long time, but the first landing was considered to be primarily a test of equipment and procedures. The scientists would get more attention in the later flights. Then they returned to the Eagle to rest fitfully for 6 hours. The LEM, with its systems gurgling and whirring, was a noisy place to sleep. When the EVA ended, it was after midnight for most of the United States. While the nation went to sleep at the end of a momentous day, a small group of Apollo engineers were working throughout the night. They had had no time to celebrate the landing or to watch the moonwalk, nor would they be able to rest any time soon. Even as the LEM stay on the surface seemed to move serenely forward, the support network labored furiously to keep the mission from self-destructing. 1. Every manned spaceflight experienced what NASA called anomalies. The signal that misrepresented the condition of John Glenn's heat shield had been a classic anomaly. Something potentially disastrous had happened, but no one had known exactly what that something was. Anomalies continued to occur on the Apollo missions, but like everything else in Apollo, they became more complicated to diagnose. The ground's first response to an anomaly, in Apollo as in Mercury, had to come from mission control. Only the Mocher and its back rooms were equipped for instant reaction. After their initial response, however, the Mocher could turn elsewhere. Sometimes they needed to have a better idea of what had really gone wrong. Why did the SPS engine show slightly less than its rated thrust during that course correction burn on Apollo 8? Sometimes they needed a prediction of what was going to happen in the future. How long could the ailing fuel cell on Gemini 5 be expected to limp along? Often the Mocher needed a way of actually fixing whatever was wrong. Such was the case during Apollo 11 after the Eagle had landed. In quick succession, 11 was faced with 3 important anomalies. To resolve them, the Mocher turned to 2 other rooms in Houston, Span and the Murr, and to 2 distant rooms in Bethpage, Long Island, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Out the main door of the Mocher and around 2 corners was the room called Span. Span stood for Spacecraft Analysis, but no one referred to it that way. Scott Simpkinson always swore he had worked there for 3 years before he found out what Span meant. Span was staffed by a small but extremely senior group of engineers and controllers. Simpkinson, by this time George Lowe's assistant program manager for flight safety, directed Span's activities and was on shift as Span operations manager during the landing of Apollo 11. Sitting beside him and across the table were 2 senior engineers from each of the major contractors. The night of the landing, they were the men who knew their respective spacecraft better than anyone else. George Jeffs, North American Rockwell's chief engineer for the command module, and Tom Kelly, Grumman's chief engineer for the lunar module. Also at the table were equally senior representatives from MIT, where the guidance and navigation systems had been developed, and from MPAD. Behind them was a row of consoles manned by supervisory controllers for flight dynamics, the CSM's systems, and the LEMS systems. Span was an interface, The jargon is precisely descriptive in this case, which linked three distinct entities, FOD, ASPO, and the contractors. True to Apollo's cavalier attitude toward hierarchies, these senior managers were tucked away in a nondescript back room, essentially to act as traffic cops and dispatchers. The indifference of many Apollo-era managers toward their status was one of NASA's most endearing traits in those years. During one of the later Apollo missions, Jerry Bostick was in Span, working the flight dynamics position. Span, like the Mooker, always had visitors, and one of them, an unassuming gentleman who looked, someone once said, like a carving of a Black Forest elf, was sitting between Bostick and the pneumatic tube, P-tube, that Bostick used for sending messages to the Mooker and back rooms. Finally, Bostick said, "Look, I don't know who the hell you are or what you're doing here, but you could make yourself useful and help get the messages out." And so the man took off his coat and sat there the rest of the shift, stuffing messages into the P-tube at Bostick's direction. The next week, one of Bostick's friends, just returned from a trip to Huntsville, told him a story. Bostick's friend had attended the weekly staff meeting of Eberhard Rees, who by that time had succeeded Werner von Braun as Marshall's director. "Dr. Rees," someone asked, "how did you enjoy being over at Houston for the launch?" Rees is said to have replied, "Well, they had me in this little room, and to be quite honest, I felt in the way. It was so crowded. But then this nice young man gave me a job, and I really felt useful." If any of the contractors or someone from FOD or ASPO saw an anomaly, the screens available in the Mooker were available to them as well. The report went to SPAN to be assessed and passed on to the appropriate parties. SPAN's staff, therefore, had to have sufficient technical knowledge and be senior enough to deal instantly, without negotiation, with their own organizations, and to reach agreements among themselves without need for approval from higher-ups. SPAN took the incoming information and, as necessary, honed it into a precise statement of the problem with a question to be answered. Once that question had been defined, SPAN went out to search for an answer. If it wished, SPAN could go directly to the manufacturer's plants. During missions, North American in Downey, Grumman on Long Island, and MIT in Cambridge each had rooms with engineers standing by 24 hours a day, with access to all of their plants' archives and testing facilities. The dozens of subcontractors scattered around the country also maintained on-duty staffs. If, for example, Grumman wanted to know the testing history of a particular LEM battery manufactured by Eagle Pitcher in Joplin, Missouri, somebody would be standing by in Joplin who could give Grumman the answer. But whether or not they phoned the contractors, SPAN's first response when confronted with a new anomaly was to write up a chit describing the problem and give it to a messenger who carried it 200 yards across a courtyard to the third floor of Building 45. This was the Mission Evaluation Room, the MIR, the domain of Mad Don Arabian. The MIR was famous, said one of Arabian's deputies, which was both true and false. The public had never heard of it. To them, Houston was synonymous with mission control, but it was famous among Apollo design engineers, for whom it was the equivalent of mission control. Indeed, many of them considered the Mooker to be comparatively trivial. In the view of these partisans, when a mission had a real problem, the place that solved it was the MIR. Crowded, sometimes noisy, apparently disorganized, the MIR was everything the Mooker wasn't. During a crisis, up to 100 engineers might be crowded around the MIR's 6 rows of holding tables, the kind used for church suppers. Each system and subsystem in the spacecraft was represented by an engineering team. The contractors assigned some of their top technical people to this room, as did ASPO. Dozens of telephones littered the tables for, as in SPAN, the engineers in the MIR were constantly on the line to their own backup rooms, elsewhere on the MSC campus, or for the contractors around the country. The difference between SPAN and the MIR was that SPAN roughly identified the nature of a problem, whereas the MIR was supposed to understand it and solve it while the spacecraft was in flight and before the effects of the problem became critical. If, as was sometimes the case, that meant mobilizing thousands of engineers nationwide, so be it. The MIR was not a high-tech room. We didn't need any fancy damn consoles or anything, Arabian proudly declared. Some of the engineers wore headsets and could plug into their choice of loops. 10 television monitors with telemetry data hung overhead along the far wall. One of the MER's staff was assigned to take Polaroid photographs of any particularly interesting screens, and those were the MER's hard copy. The engineers brought in binoculars so they could make out what the distant numbers were. During a busy part of the flight, the MER presented a strange sight, with dozens of men wearing white shirts and ties sitting in a closed room holding binoculars to their eyes. The assets of the MER lay not in the technology of the room, but in the brains of its members. Assembled in that one room was a vast storehouse of knowledge about how the spacecraft worked and how to jury-rig a fix that would pull the mission out of trouble. And no one embodied the no-sweat, we-can-do-that confidence of the MER more than its leader, Don Arabian. Mad Don was only one of several appellations for him. Variations included the Madman, the Wild Man, and the Wild Arabian. His real name was Donald Dionysius Arabian. In 1949, he had gone directly from the University of Rhode Island to work for Langley, where he relished the precise and elegant engineering for engineering's sake that characterized Langley. Then in 1960, he moved over to join the Space Task Group. In 1967, shortly after heading up one of the panels for the 204 Review Board, he was chosen to be head of Houston's Test Division, part of ASPO. During a flight, Arabian ran the MER. After the flight, he orchestrated the preparation of the sacred text for each mission, the Mission Evaluation Report, and personally spent most of his time on one chapter in it, the Anomaly Report. This chapter informed FOD, the rest of ASPO, and the contractors which of the 50-odd anomalies reported during a typical mission were hardware malfunctions and which were procedural errors by the crew or ground. The Anomaly Report analyzed each of the true anomalies and reported on what had been done to rectify the situation, ending each section with the imperious pronouncement, "This anomaly is closed." Arabian had a raised platform just inside the doorway of the MER from which he could look out over the long, narrow room. When a new problem came over from Span, he would holler in his pronounced nasal Rhode Island accent, "All right, folks, we got a problem here we gotta work. Let's get going on it." Then, having assembled the people who would work on it for a preliminary assessment, he would prowl back and forth in front of the blackboard, tall and lean, wide white grin, flashing blue eyes, waving the chalk, stopping periodically to scribble on the board, talking rapidly, contemptuous of grammar. Once in a while he would stop suddenly, head cocked, eyes withdrawn, as he attacked some new line of thought. Arabian was known as Mad Don partly because of his ideas, and partly because of his unrestrained enthusiasm in expressing them. According to an engineer who worked with him, when there was a meeting to hash out a technical issue, everybody always shuddered when you got around to Arabian, because we knew it was either going to be back to square one or off into left field. You never knew exactly where he was going to come from. But he was too good an engineer for the others not to listen, no matter how crazy his latest notion sounded at first. Arabian didn't give a damn about what anybody else thought. He had his own ideas about how things ought to be, and he was sure he was right, and he didn't care if everybody else in the room thought differently. "See, I'm one guy a lot of people are afraid of," Arabian said accurately. "There's a reason for it, because if anybody does anything technically that's not according to physics, that's bullshitting about something, I will forever be death on them. I mean, you'd better be exact, you'd better show technical elegance. It doesn't make any difference how smart you are, you'd better not ever prostitute physics." Physics was the one entity that Arabian would forbear from antagonizing. Good-natured and generous in his personal relationships, he had pungent, mostly critical opinions about everything in his professional life. Organization was just a nuisance. You find out what the rules of the game are, then you determine how to get around the ones that are detrimental to what you want to do. People were problematic. A few, mainly Lowe and Kraft, had his boundless admiration. Arabian also liked and freely praised certain other engineers, Faget, Jeffs, people like that, and most of the contractor engineers who were assigned to the MER. But Arabian thought that just about everybody else was in the way. This tended to include his own subordinates in the test division. "I never wanted people to work for me. It just takes away from you." NASA executives from headquarters, hubcaps, useless ornamentation. Senior executives with the contractors, Their goal is just to make a buck. Flight controllers, they spend most of their time coming up with flight rules. Then, when something happens, they haven't the foggiest idea what you need to do. Astronauts, a lot of them aren't too damn swift, and perhaps most eloquently, the Cape. This is vintage Arabian on launch operations. Those thousands of people in the firing room at KSC are not needed. We went and landed on the moon. Strange place, never before been there. Didn't know where the landing spot was going to be. Imitates the sound of the LEMS engine shutting down. They got out, they messed around, ate lunch and everything else, and when they're ready to go, they kick the rocks out of the way, brush themselves off, axe out parts of both astronauts. They have no white coats on, there's no ground support equipment, there are no consoles or anything else, and one says, "Okay, you ready to go?" "Yeah, I'm ready to go." "Okay, you put the sandwiches away." And when they're ready to go, they press a button. They call up Houston and say, "Houston, we are go for liftoff." Houston says, "You're go." If there's something wrong, Houston couldn't have done a damn thing. That was all on their own, 2 guys, okay? And they did it 6 times, launched from the moon, strange environment, without any firing rooms or anything else. Then you say to yourself, if they did it there, what the hell's going on at KSC? All of these heterodox opinions were expressed with a big grin, without personal animosity, and with absolute conviction, anywhere, anytime. Arabian's particular disfavor was reserved for anyone who tinkered with hardware once it had been properly designed and built. He was a relentless foe of the kind of testing they did at the Cape, which in his opinion accomplished nothing except to take operational life out of the systems. Note that the word test is being used for 2 different meanings. At the Cape, the test conductors tested to see whether the hardware for the next flight was operating according to specs. Arabian's test division was charged with testing the equipment relative to functions it was supposed to fulfill. Or to put it another way, the Cape tested the flight hardware, while the test division tested the design. But either way the word was used, Arabian played no favorites. He also took pot shots at his own test division. The test division shouldn't exist, Arabian said. Reliability and efficiency in a piece of equipment had to be designed in. There shouldn't be a separate organization to check that kind of thing. Build the hardware right to begin with, and you won't have to bring all these unreliable human beings into the act later. And there, finally, Arabian's view of the cosmos rested. He had faith in hardware systems and in designs that obeyed the laws of physics, and a deep distrust of human performance. See, the brain is very clever, Arabian said to all who would listen. It can perceive things, it can create things, and all that. But it's the most undependable, unreliable, unpredictable device that exists. Arabian included his own brain in the indictment, citing the time he forgot to lower the landing gear in his little Beechcraft as proof of the brain's treachery. With regard to his own flying, it must be said that some small inconsistency in Arabian's position may be discerned. Namely, he seemed to believe that some benign providence would rescue him from just about anything. Arabian flew himself everywhere during the Apollo years, but mostly alone because he tended to make passengers nervous. Scott Simpkinson remembered sitting in the co-pilot seat one day when they got out to the end of the runway and discovered that one of the plane's magnetos was out. "Don't worry about it," Arabian shouted to Simpkinson over the noise of the engine as he proceeded to take off anyway. On another occasion, after some mysterious episodes in which the Beechcraft's engine had been sputtering and backfiring, threatening to quit altogether, Arabian decided that he needed to do some systematic troubleshooting. So he took the little plane up near its ceiling, about 15,000 feet, where he would have, in his words, plenty of time, and proceeded to induce the engine problem, testing out alternative explanations. It was perfectly safe, he said. He made sure he was within gliding distance of an airport. Arabian's passionate allegiance to physics was invaluable for his role at the Mir. When an ambiguous problem came in, he wouldn't settle for an explanation unless it fit all the conditions. He was always aware of the brain's propensity to jump to convenient conclusions. If something goes wrong, let's say, and there are 10 conditions that must be satisfied, and this one thesis satisfies them all precisely, see, except one, okay, then that ain't it. It's not almost. You're either there or you ain't there. Time and again during Apollo, Arabians' cheerful intransigence turned out to be crucial. Often the situation that the Mir had to deal with was indeed a problem for which there seemed to be an excellent explanation that fit all of the facts, all of them but one, and Arabian would refuse to accept it until that last small unimportant anomalous fact was understood. When, frequently, it became clear that the problem and its solution were quite different than had been previously thought. In Houston, Arabian was sui generis, a legend in his own time, Chris Kraft once wrote. A knowledgeable observer in the FOD that Arabian disdained, thinking about the people at MSC who made the Apollo flights successful, decided that 4 men ultimately stood out: Kraft, Lowe, Tyndall, and Arabian.
And that was Chapter 25 and Chapter 25, Part 1 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that abortion is power for men.